Good morning, gentlemen. It's September 19th, 2021. I'm in North Gower, Ontario, and I am in the presence of three former firefighters and full part-time firefighter or volunteer for the City of Ottawa, Andrew. And combined years of service, we have in our presence well over 100 years of firefighting service. So first of all, thank you for your service. On my left, I have Allen Sadler. And this particular fire hall here in North Gower is named after him. And Alan, you have how many years of service? 50 years of service. That's amazing. In the middle we have Andrew Mills. Andrew, you're a volunteer here in the community in North Gower?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and you've been well into volunteering for quite a few years now.
Yeah, I believe 18.
I believe 18, awesome. And to his left, our right, is retired Deputy Chief Gord Mills, who was Chief and also District Chief, I believe, for the volunteers at one time?
Captain and then first full-time chief.
First full-time Chief for the Rural Division.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I am just going to let these guys share some stories. First of all, I've got to get your ages. Alan, how old are you? 73. Well, you look pretty good for 73, buddy. What year did you grow up here in North Gower?
Yes. Yep.
What year did you start volunteering here?
65.
I think
1965? That sounds like a good year. Yeah.
Pretty sure.
Gord, when did you start volunteering here?
same time.
Yeah.
There was a group, pretty much close friends, all started at the same time.
Yeah. So you guys knew each other?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. You grew up in North Gower?
Yeah.
Wow. And Andrew, 18 years ago.
18, yeah, I think around 04 or 03, one of the other.
Wonderful. Good stuff. So tell me a little bit about your family life growing up. You grew up on a farm. I mean, this is a farming community. Or what did you end up doing, Alan?
Well, I was a carpenter. My father was a carpenter.
Yeah.
So we just carried on with that. So it was always in the village here. We were always working in the village here.
What was your desire to become a volunteer firefighter here in North Gower?
It was Gordy's father that approached us all and I guess got us involved.
Were you the first generation, or did you have brothers or a father that
My
volunteered?
father was on years ago, yeah.
Yeah. What's his name?
Percy?
Percy.
Yeah.
So he started as a volunteer in the
years ago
community?
when I guess maybe there wasn't even a record then, eh?
Not likely, no, because I couldn't find anything on Percy at all, so.
Yeah. But like dig into the archives and find out. So Alan, do you remember when you came on as a volunteer, do you remember what was the trucks, what were the trucks like? I mean, we've got an old truck here behind us. I don't even know what year it is.
That was pretty well it.
This was the truck.
Yeah.
And what do we have behind you here? What year is that one? Do we?
Like 1948.
1948.
That was the truck that we had.
And it still runs. Doesn't go out on calls. It's more of a parade truck.
Yeah.
And that was one of the only trucks you had.
Yep, yeah.
Did it hold any water in?
When it left, we jumped on the running board and went to it.
And so back then they didn't have bunker gear. What did they have you wearing?
Pretty well what you came in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And the old catch coats and
Yeah. Yeah.
and the long rubber boots and yeah.
One size fits all.
Yeah. So
That's all, right?
what about SCBAs? Anything like that?
Not on the start of it.
No.
And
So-
then the Scots came along, yeah.
So of course, when Andrew got on, things were a little different when it comes to PPEs. And of course, Andrew, you didn't know what it was like to wear hip waders, as we called them. No?
I had full bunker gear when I got on.
They were great for fishing, but not necessarily for firefighting. Yeah, but things progressed as we move forward. Gord, do you remember your first fire call?
You mean officially after, or when I was just chasing the trucks?
Yeah, well, when you...
First one, oh my gosh.
You can help them there, Alan, if it was the same fire.
Probably grass fires. 'Cause
Yeah.
it seemed to be, you stayed around every weekend for the grass fires. You
Yeah.
know. even before we were on, a lot of us would be there stamping them out and helping out and so forth. Yeah, probably grass or bush fires was a lot back then. So.
Now, the location that we're in is on Roger Stevens Road. I didn't quite get the municipal numbers. It's, what's the address here?
I just know how to get here.
He just knows how to get here. Is this where the original fire hall was?
This is where it originally started. When they formalized the fire service, they had one bay. This was originally the municipal garage. So the graders and everything ran out of here. And the end bay was dedicated to the fire department. And so we had this vehicle and a panel van, and actually we had a tanker jammed in there at one time as well,
In one bay.
in one small bay.
My goodness. Wow. And so, Alan, do you remember any of the fires that you were on over the 50 years that you want to elaborate on?
We had a lot of, in the fall, we used to get a lot of barn fires,
Yeah.
when everybody was still farming,
Yeah.
and it was small farms.
And any in particular that comes to mind where there may have been, you know, cattle loss maybe?
It was always lost like that, yeah. Nothing comes to really mind, just had someone. Yeah.
So what was it like back then going into doing a search in a home for maybe potential people that were trapped inside? I mean, you didn't go in with an SCBA?
The SCBAs.
How did you end up breathing when you went in?
Don't really remember going into a lot of them.
No, it used to be, I think the department was very fire conscious because we had some of the original members that started had spent time at the fire college. Like we had volunteers who had completed 40-hour courses there. So, I mean, safety was ingrained. But I can remember wearing the old Scott demand breathers before they were converted. And one particular fire was a farmhouse kitchen fire. And I was crawling through behind one of the other members, and they came across a cat, unconscious, and we kind of scared him, and he grabbed it, and he went like that, and went right through the window out into the snowbank. And it was funny, later on, we got the fire out, and prevented a lot of damage. But when we get out there, we look over, and here's this groggy old cat staggering around in the snow, and those are the sort of funny things that you kind of remember.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw a lot of tragic stuff back before there was much in the way of extrication equipment and so forth. And of course, the roads back then too. We had some particular corners, Brownlee's corners and so forth, that were known for bad accidents. So it was a challenge, to say the least, at times.
Like that. Now, Gord, you had two generations of fire service here with your family, Andrew and yourself, but your father, Eldon, was on the fire department, right?
Yeah.
And his father, can catch his name?
Fred.
Fred, that's right. Fred was on the fire department as well. Let's start with Fred. What do you know about your grandfather being on the fire department?
Well, what I heard from him, he was probably one of the best swearers in the whole village. Had quite a temper, but he was very dedicated to the community. He was one of those individuals assigned to inspect the soda acid extinguishers. And at that time, my understanding was they had a soda extinguisher in every second house. And actually, I hear stories of some of the major fires that they put out in the Anglican rectory and so forth. Very aggressive, right up in the attic area, so they did quite a job. So now that's all before 1948. He passed away in 47. And then after the major fire at the corner down here where they lost a bakery, I don't know, barber shop. Anyway, it was a few properties that were lost that night. And after that, the council came forward with trying to establish a regulated fire service. And at that time, that's when Howard Perkins, H.L. Perkins and Perkins Lumber, he was appointed chief, and my dad was deputy chief at that time. So, yeah, there's quite a group of the original members of the community here. And I was going through it the other day, and the sad thing is, of all of those men, the only one still surviving is Fred Alport.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So this would be the original group of men from what year, Gord?
So that was 1948 that was established. This fire truck order at the time, 1948 Bickle seat rate, and it arrived in 1949. And that's when, of course, they moved into the NDA. And maybe even up, at that time they had a carriage-mounted pump, kind of a military design, and that used to be drawn around the village by hand.
A hand pump.
And that thing stayed in service, I bet you, for another 20 years in a small building, pumping water out of the creek. And
My goodness.
built a small garage for it, and it was connected to a culvert. And my God, and it had a heat lamp on it, so it would start in the wintertime.
Yeah.
And that thing, I tell you, pumped, I don't know how much, because it used to fill the tankers. And
So what was your father's, I don't know, rank or title on the fire department? Not your father, sorry, your grandfather at the time.
I
Sorry.
think they just called them fire wardens.
Fire wardens.
Yeah.
And so the ones that would come out to help them fight the fire would just be people,
Yeah, I don't
regular
even
tax-
know if they called it a brigade. It would have just been
would be volunteers.
just volunteers, and of course, not necessarily an established set of volunteers, but there's supposedly a village brigade and then a township brigade as well.
Because North Gower is part of Rideau Township, or was part of Rideau Township, I
It
believe.
was originally North Gower Township.
Yeah.
North Gower Township included Manotick area, and then west of us was Marlborough. Now, when Rideau was established, it used to be North Gower, Marlborough, and then it became, when it was Rideau, it included Marlborough into the mix. And then Marlborough was all the way to the Lanark boundary zone.
So while your grandfather was fire warden, your dad also helped fight fires.
Well,
And then he worked his way up the rank to become the chief of North Gower. What year did he become chief of North Gower?
19... Yeah.
It was quite a while.
Howard, yeah, so Howard was 56, I think,
Yeah.
when Howard Perkins became Reed and stepped down as fire chief.
Your dad stepped in at that point?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And then there was a group of captains at that time appointed, or they already had them appointed, so
So would it be considered the North Gower volunteer firefighters or the Rideau Township
it was called North Gower.
at that point?
North Gower,
Township of North Gower.
Township of North Gower.
There you
Fire
go.
Department.
And so your dad was honored last year at the Ottawa Firefighters Memorial as a line of duty death. So he,
No, it's a
or
Legacy of Courage.
my apologies, Legacy of Courage, and he had just passed away a couple years ago.
Yeah, 2000 and,
A couple years ago.
Couple
Few
years
ago. And so how many years did he have in?
he had 35 years,
35.
yeah,
And were you a volunteer when he was chief?
yeah.
My goodness. So if there was no break in between the families then, where nobody was volunteering, and of course,
My older brother was a volunteer and my younger brother.
both of them. Now
Yeah.
your youngest brother His name is Brian. He was a veterinarian in Cumberland, I believe,
Yeah.
and he volunteered out that way. He was considered a line of duty death. That's where the kind of the confusion was back a few years ago. So both of your brothers and your other brother, his name is?
Tom.
Tom. So is Tom still volunteering? Or
No, he retired a number of years ago after, he had close to 30 years service.
And where was he volunteering? Which
Here.
in North
yeah.
Gower. So Brian was out in Cumberland,
Yeah.
and Tom and yourself were here.
Mm-hmm.
So you went through from becoming a volunteer through the ranks. What happened after you volunteered then? I mean, my goodness, I remember going on fires and you coming in and taking command and being, of the scene as a chief. And I'm thinking, you went through the ranks. How did all that happen? What happened there? How did you manage that?
Just fate, I guess.
Yeah.
But,
So what happened after becoming a volunteer? Where did you go?
well, Joe Beckett, who was chief at the time here, back in the 90s, he had gone to take the fire chief's position in Wilburn. And of course, a lot of us were very upset about it, saying that, he should have been here as a full-time chief. So there was a fair bit of pressure put on council that it was time to have a full-time chief. And I was at a point in my life where I'd been in private industry for like 20 years before that.
What were you doing?
Oh, I was a manager of a manufacturing company. I had a job in a Napa store that I had started, and was actually working for a firm that was building fire trucks. And so anyway, I applied for the job, and eventually I was appointed in '91 as the first full-time chief. And I was responsible for building the fire hall and the new fire hall in Manatic, and starting to buy new equipment, all new SCBA, because that was the trouble before. When you had two factions trying to deal with council, they were playing one off against the other. And so no, I think there was some great progress made at the time.
And just reading a few of the articles in the newspaper, you also had a really invested interest in the volunteers, because you knew the importance of volunteers within the community, especially the rural sector. When you're out in the rural, I mean, the volunteers are the first in line. So I know that you looked after, and I'm going to say us because I was a volunteer for 14 years, in what our needs were. Yeah. So from there, you became the chief of Rideau Township.
Yeah. Chris Powers had left and gone to Nepean. And at the same time, my brother was diagnosed with a brain tumor. So it was kind of unfortunate because we hadn't had the chance to work together for years. And when I was out there, he was basically on disability.
Yeah.
So that went on for 2 years, and then he succumbed to the tumor. And he was an intricate part of the operation. He was a captain, well respected. Of course, had lots of experience. Even when he was going through in Guelph Veterinary College, he was volunteering there as well. So
Wow.
yeah. So as soon as he got back here, he was right back into it again. And
Well, he certainly was well loved in the community as a vet, as a doctor.
well respected.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, he was probably one of the better known horse vets around. And
Yeah. So when did you move from here out? You became chief out in Cumberland.
So I left here in '94. We commuted for 6 months, which was quite a challenge. Because the kids were in school out there, and hauling them back and forth every day. And then we sold the house here that we built and moved in, and it was quite a change going from strictly very rural community to a more suburban. And we stuck that out for a couple of years, and then we moved out to Navan, and that was a great compromise, you know. So,
So being
That's
chief of
some,
Cumberland was pre-amalgamation.
yeah, pre-amalgamation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a combination force there.
Yeah.
We had a staff station in Orleans, and then the 3 stations, rural stations in Vars and Cumberland Village and Navan. And a lot of the full-time guys responded back after hours as volunteers, you know, and we had a great system for paying and so forth. And great community support for buying equipment and everything else. So it was much like here, you know,
Yeah.
very much community involved. So
And of course, as we know, amalgamation stepped in,
yeah,
changed things.
spoiled a great model to be
Yeah.
followed.
Yeah. And of course, North Gower is, even though it's part of Ottawa, it's still North Gower. It's still a small, knit community, growing.
Yeah.
Probably not as rapidly as some of the other communities, but it is still growing. And after amalgamation, you became,
Deputy Chief for Rural Operations.
and that's where I remember you from,
Yeah.
because you would look after all the rural areas, right from the former Osgood Township, Cumberland,
Yeah.
Rideau, even further west, I would believe.
Oh, yeah. Right up to
And
Galetta, Fitzroy. It was an hour's drive when I was in the east end to get to the other end.
so if there was a call up at Galetta and you were out in Cumberland, even though you're going lights and sirens, it'd take you a little while to get up there. So
Yeah.
that's where you relied on a lot of the, I guess, the sector chiefs?
Yeah, sector chiefs. We were fortunate in that respect. We argued for 5 and we got 4. And so we wound up with some people that had an intricate background in those areas. So that certainly helped a lot.
Yeah.
But then it was the amalgamation part where you start trying to restructure every station the same,
Yeah.
pay everybody the same, give everybody the same benefits, and then show up at a budget meeting to find out that the budget people think that volunteers don't get paid.
Yeah.
So that was like a $2 million hit right off the start, so.
I read that article.
Yeah,
So Alan, I guess you're quite happy that at that point you were probably retired from volunteering. What, you were still volunteering after amalgamation?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
When I was here, Steve.
Yep,
Really?
yep.
Wow.
Yeah, I was still here when Andrew
What,
started.
when did you retire from from the venture then? What year was it? You remember?
Yeah.
When?
8 years ago.
Even
Okay.
years ago, I guess. I retired when I was 65.
Okay. Now we're not done with Gord yet. We're gonna get back to you in a minute.
yeah, they forced him at his 65.
Please put Brush 53, UTV 53,
We're just gonna wait.
on the air for training 4103 Wood Hilton Road will be in service with delayed response.
You can edit
So-
that and I can turn that down?
Yeah, we'll leave it on. It's all part of it, right?
Chief Ellis, brush truck and rules.
I know you're gonna ask Alan questions, but I want to emphasize,
Brush truck and UTV 10-3.
I can't edit it though. Yeah.
Coming up.
Go ahead, Gord.
there's a lot of people that get 50 years service who don't necessarily earn it. You know, the last number of years, it kind of just keeps them on to help them out the door.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, Alan worked right up to the last minute,
My goodness.
you know.
And that's what I want to ask. I said, first of all, what's the name of what's the number of the station now? What do we have?
83.
83. So we're at station 83. And Alan, that was an interesting point, Gord, that you just made. First of all, this fire hall is named after you,
Yes,
and that's quite an honor.
it is a big honor.
How did you manage to get the fire hall named after Alan? I mean, I'm
I really haven't.
Blown away by that.
I really haven't figured that out.
I think Andrew,
No, I really haven't. It was a big honor, really big honor, that's for
Yeah.
sure. Yep.
I bet you every time the tones went off, you were here.
Well, I did my best, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I work in the village pretty well all the time, within a pretty good radius of North Gower,
Yeah.
so it wasn't,
And when you think about it, the 50 years that you've responded as a firefighter here to the fire hall, whether it be a call or a false alarm, if you were to document every call that you've been on, it would probably be more than a full-time in the same amount of career, to a certain extent, depending on what fire station you're at. Because you would have went to all of them if you're in the community.
most of them were,
Yeah.
as many as I possibly could, yeah.
And as we know, the dinner fork is about to go to the mouth, the tones go off. And when you first started, how did they page you out? How did they get a hold of you to,
Used to ring a
Siren.
siren.
there was a siren?
Yeah,
Still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would be like an air raid siren?
Yeah, it was pretty loud. You could, where I live, you could hear it all the time. It covered the
Now-
territory.
Now you're married?
Yes,
Family? How many kids?
3.
No, they're all grown up now? Yeah. But back then, you're a young dad. Your wife didn't say, "You're not going because we're sitting having family dinner."
No, never.
Or, "You know what? You worked all night. You're not going because you got to get some sleep."
No, never.
She was just as much a part of the fire department as you were.
Yep.
Can we mention her name?
Sharon?
Sharon?
Sharon, yes.
Awesome. And big part. Of course, any galas, any dances, anything that the fire department was involved with, she would be a big part of it.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And that's a very important thing, especially in the rural, that we acknowledge, the spouses as well. So,
Yeah, on the start, you'd come home with some pretty dirty clothes.
yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
had to clean them.
Now, we've heard the story of the cat. You got any interesting stories?
None that really come to mind. They're all interesting. I remember when we had the old Rio tanker in the other end there, we used to have to jack it up on a couple of planks in case it didn't start, and we'd be able to push it out down the hill.
Push it out from the fire hall here.
Yeah,
Hoping that there was no cars going by at the time.
get it started going down the slope here.
And somebody would be on there with the clutch or something, and
Yeah. It was quite a truck to push.
Quite a truck to shift.
Yeah.
do you remember any banting or humor or fun stuff that went on in the fire hall, Alan, that brings back memories? Did you guys ever have water fights? Anybody fill somebody's boots with sauerkraut, anything like that? Any stories?
Nothing like that, but it was a lot of good times. It was a lot of good times for sure. Yeah, a lot of hard work, and it was a little different back then. If you had a barn fire or something like that, you usually had the neighboring farmers to help you,
True.
and whereas you don't seem to have that now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of camaraderie all the way around. Yeah.
So Andrew, we haven't gotten really to you yet.
Yeah,
You're hearing all these stories and you're thinking, my gosh, so different now than it was back then. Because you came out on after amalgamation.
yes. So, yeah, that was a big, so my dad approached me one day, said, hey, you want to be a volunteer? And I just said, yes. Now, of course, when I was like a young kid, when Dad was chief here, I'd be running around here, messing around with the trucks when I probably shouldn't have. But, it was a big eye-opener when I first got on, thinking I was going to walk in here and recognize all these faces. But, I guess, unfortunately, we lost quite a few of the good guys, or a lot of the good guys. Of course, I think it was Al was one of the ones I recognized almost. We lost guys like George Pratt and Keith Moore and Seabrooks, and I think the list goes on.
And of course, starting off, you didn't assume that, hey, I'm just going to walk in here and start fighting fires. You had to go through the rigorous training that's set up for firefighters, whether it be full-time or volunteers. There's quite a setup when it comes to training and even interviewing. things like that. So you weren't just thrown right into it. So Andrew, you came on after amalgamation. So hearing all these stories from Alan and your father, it's kind of like so foreign when you hear about riding on the back of an old fire truck, or these patch coats or rubber boots, or going into a building and only breathing in. I remember when I volunteered going into a building and only breathing the mist from the water from the fire hose as you did a fog pattern, and that was the only way that you can get any relief. Do you remember, coming in? It wasn't like you just jumped into it. There was training and of course probably an interview or two that you may have had to do.
And I believe we had 6 months of training before we could get onto the floor.
Yeah. Did you have a specific training officer?
Pat Kelly was
Pat Kelly.
our captain at Greeley now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he was your training captain.
Yeah.
And so there was a group of you that came in. Maybe how many volunteers got on at the same time that you did? You think?
It was 3. It was Matt McLaughlin and Kathy Fenton, who was is our captain's wife.
Awesome.
And Matt is still on now. So.
Yeah. So do you remember your first call that you're on?
I don't think I do. I can't.
No.
I can't recall. I remember when a house fire showing up, and Al Sadler, I think, had the biggest hose line off the pump, and he was resting. It was a daytime call, so he was resting against the tree, shooting water through the window all by himself. So that could be a reason why the station's named after him.
And how has it been since then? I mean, 18 years, you've been to a lot of different fires. Medical calls is a big one as well,
Yes.
right? Anything that stick out, without naming any names, that, any moments that stick out, whether it be happy moments, sad moments,
Well, at the
surprise
time,
moments?
it was an honor to be able to go to calls when you had a guy like 50 years at the guy Cal, and there was times that my dad would be command, McCarthy, so it was pretty special.
So you actually had to listen to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. How awkward was that? Was it awkward at all?
There was lots of jokes, that's for sure, about being Chief's son, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But there was all in good humor.
But of course, when you get those jabs, it's fire station banter going on. Not like it used to be, though. You got to be a little more careful. But at the same time, you look like a gentleman that can handle those jabs. And you know what? You're proud. You're proud. Your dad was the fire chief, right? So, and family man.
Yes, I have a 2.5-year-old and a wife named Becky.
A 2.5-year-old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thomas.
A little boy?
Yep.
Yeah, who's maybe going to grow up to become,
Yeah, we'll
of
see.
course, a firefighter
Which
like his dad. I'm sure he runs around with a little plastic Chiefs hat on right now at
He's got a
Halloween.
little fire truck as we speak.
Yeah.
Nice fire truck.
So we heard how Alan was summoned to come to the fire hall through a large air horn, siren outside. How do they page you out now? How do they get a hold of you now?
We still have pagers, and then also we have the IAR like an app that you get your phone. You get your call right off your phone now too.
Wow, so different. Probably has a GPS on it a little bit too.
Yeah, it gives you like the location of the fire and everything.
So you're not running around kind of looking for smoke
Yeah.
or listening for the sirens.
Yes.
Yeah. And that probably was some of the task back then, Alan, where you go, can't see the fire, I guess we'll just kind of look for the smoke in the air. It was great during the daytime. Nighttime it really sucked, I guess.
Yeah, it's different, that's for sure now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to your grandfather, how did they do it back then, Gord?
I don't know how far back that siren goes, really. Of course, back then, I mean, there was not a whole lot of commuting out of the village. I mean, so if something happened, word got around pretty quick, I would imagine. So,
It's probably phone calls over the phone.
well, because you only had a switching station, all you had to do was call there and tell her to get a hold of everybody.
Yeah.
But,
And if everybody had the same party line, it was a lot easier because everybody's listening on to everybody else's conversation anyway.
yeah. The telephone switching station was just over in an old building right on Main Street here, so I remember that as a kid.
So,
Notifications evolved over time, like, it wasn't that long. I mean, we've had pagers for, oh God, many years, eh?
oh yeah.
And if you were a captain, you actually took a mobile base home for a month at a time. And then we got to the point where we could actually set the siren off. And then we were able to actually activate the pagers from that mobile base and give the message. So, and then in the early, the late 60s, I guess it was, we got part-time dispatchers.
Yeah.
And they used to work out of here. So,
We've certainly have come a long way when it comes to communications.
oh, yeah, sure.
Unbelievable. And your wife's name is Jill, Gord?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she stuck by your side for all those years that you were firefighting.
Yeah, I gotta admit, she never was one to complain about it.
How many years you got married? In
48.
Get it right now, because your wife's
I
going
think
to
it's 48. I think it's 49, yes. We're talking about something for next year. But it's 48.
What are you doing in your retirement?
Mowing lawns for a guy I work for.
More like took over my business.
Yeah.
Is that what you do, Andrew?
I worked for the city of Ottawa, and then I started cutting grass on the side, and then when Dad retired, he took over.
It seems to be a retirement job for a lot of people. They like cutting lawns.
Yeah, sitting your ass, yeah.
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 So you're cutting lawns, traveling at all? I mean, with COVID.
Been traveling, camping, and with our new grandson, we were looking after him quite a bit, especially with COVID and Andrew's wife working at a home,
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's been a lot of fun, and yeah, so we got, as he gets older, maybe we'll get a chance to take him places more.
I want to go back to your firefighting career, both Alan and Andrew and Gordon. I just want you guys to feed off of one another with regards to stories. Do you recall, we'll start with Gord, any calls where you just kind of go, you kind of slap the top of your head and go, what just happened?
That's
We
fascinating.
were at the marina over on the Rideau one night, and it was, you gotta think it was late fall, and there was a skim of ice over the river, and we're packing up. I think we had the portable pump set up on some of the docks, and all of a sudden there was this wave, and the ice was cracking. You remember this? Someone had jumped, was turning around, and as he turned around, he got miscrewed, and you could see the boat ramp, but looked like the road, and drove the truck right into the Rideau River.
This truck?
This truck here.
How long ago was that?
Oh God, that was still frontline pump, so it's got to be 40 years ago. Yes. And boy, there was some ribbon over that.
Oh,
And I remember we towed it home just to be safe, to make sure there's no. And I should have done it, but I came in early the next morning, and I took a piece of chalk and I marked a line like this, water line on it. My God.
Now, without naming any names, but if you want to, you can. If that person's still around and they'd get a chuckle out of
No,
it, or we'll
of
just
course.
leave it at that.
Fred Hodges was one of the many people we've lost over the years. He died far too young. And, with the presumptive legislation and that, you really got to think, how many of these guys from way back were affected by some of the fires that were in. Like you look at the way some people died and died far too young. Heart attack's one thing, but we had a few people that died of brain tumors, you know. Wayne Pratt, Clifton Pratt died far too young, you know. Glenn Wallace, who, his daughter, Sandra Beer, she's a dispatcher, you know. He died suddenly of a heart attack, and they showed where he'd had heart attacks in the past. So did he have it at one of our calls, you know, that stressed out and so forth? Because he was an awful goer, that guy. He was, you know, the type of person that you really miss over the years. So. But yeah, so many people that passed away far too young that were involved with the service. So.
So that was one of those head-slapping moments with the fire truck going into the river. Any calls that you know where do you remember any calls that were just kind of so dramatic, so emotionally draining that you want to share with us? That you know, because people watching this, they don't know the heart of a firefighter and what goes on in the body and the mind when it comes to the stress. And any calls that you may have been on that you know, there was a loss of life, or that you recall, or
well, we had an elderly couple
too.
actually lived fairly close to me, and they lived in a small little log cabin and heated with wood, and the early morning fire, and they perished, the two elderly people. And I always remember to this day, like, the guys all lined up to make sure that nobody outside could see as we were taking the bodies out. And when we rolled the old gentleman over, he's still clutching a water pitcher, or like a pan, that he obviously been trying to fight the fire before he collapsed, you know. And I think it was pretty tough on a lot of people. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yeah.
Just up on McCordick Road, yeah.
So those certainly are things that you it's in your head, it's in your mind, you can visualize it, and it's difficult to deal with it. So how do you deal with the stress? I mean, back then, Alan, you were also dealing with you know, the same things that firefighters deal with today: death, children, loss of property and life. How did you deal with it back then? How did one deal with it through amalgamation? And Andrew, how does one deal with it now as a firefighter? How do you deal with those?
You lean on your other fellow members, and we're very lucky here. It's always been a very close group, and yeah, we've all seen some pretty bad calls, but that's what your fellow guys are for. And also now there is the support help too, of course, but I don't know, I think personally it's all about the guys that are around you, or the members that are around you.
Yeah. And how about yourself, Alan? Do you still have vivid memories of some of them, that, or do you try to, as time goes on, time erases it?
Yeah, time seems to fix everything. Yeah, it does.
Of course, Gord, you have been to quite a few calls because being chief, you obviously had to deal with different, both the volunteers but also the full-time firefighters. We call it a composite department here in Ottawa. And of course, you're dealing with, you were dealing with both sides. And how did you deal with the volunteers? You know, was there things set in place for them when you were chief, when it came to PTSD and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think, you know, over time it's become much more of a disciplined approach to dealing with some of this stuff. And Cumberland actually was one of the first to start the critical incident stress debriefing team. And that goes way back to Reverend Bob McDowell.
That's right.
A number of years before I went there.
He was a volunteer out there.
Yes, he was. And he moved down east and actually came back to do my brother's service. But, you know, all areas have tragedies, but it seemed to me when I went to Cumberland that they had more than their share. You know, they had firefighter suicide, they had, I don't know how many different accidents with kids involved that were thrown out of the back of trucks or hit while they're on snowmobiles or ATVs. You know, and then in '96 we had probably one of the most greatest tragedies in my whole career when we had a young firefighter killed while responding to a call. And then on top of that, there was a 2-year-old killed in the accident as well, combated by the fact that the firefighter's father was in the vehicle behind him following him to the station.
Yeah.
You know, those things, I mean, the look of horror on the firefighters' faces when I got there, because it was all part and parcel of a big structure fire we had going close to Nav. And finally got hauled away from there. He said, you know, you got to go down there right now. And here they are all standing around with this absolute terror on their face, waiting to be able to take a well-liked, good friend out from underneath his vehicle, you know, while his family stood on the side of the road. And other families there mourning their
loss of a child.
It was just like you couldn't write a worse terrible.
So honoring firefighters obviously is very, very important. Your brother was honored. Your father was honored. I look out, there's a plaque out here by even a flagpole. There's a flagpole that was put up and a plaque. I don't know the firefighter's name, but
Captain Howard Greer.
Now, what was special about him?
Well, Howard actually was a line of duty death. He left here one night in the old Rio tanker to go to a fire out on Donnelly Drive, I think. Took a heart attack and managed to get the truck out of gear and rolled to a stop in front of Burton. And I guess it was Lyle, ran up to see what the problem was, opened the door, and Howard fell out on him and died in the spot.
So Firefighter Greer, line of duty death. Not only was he not, you know, he wasn't thinking of his own well-being at that point, he was thinking of other people at that point, where he didn't want to end up having an accident and injuring or killing somebody, so he took the truck out of gear and let it roll off to the side. I mean, that is one man who obviously is honored with the plaque, but definitely his bravery lives on and through the stories. And those are stories that are important that we document, that we keep alive. So I'm honored today to be able to sit with you guys.
I think you need to be commended because there's not enough of this, and as people pass on, these stories are lost, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, every time I do an interview like this, I'm learning more. I'm learning more about the history as well, and it's important. North Gower is an amazing little town. I mean, all I knew about North Gower was Perkins Lumber, not much more. But as time goes on, we learn about the community through people like yourselves. So thank you so much, gentlemen. We're going to take a walk around, though, and let's check out some of the trucks that Andrew drives and a little bit of history about this thing that's behind you guys. And we'll let Alan jump on the back of the running board if he feels up to it, to reminisce, and maybe it might bring back some memories.
For sure.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Here we are again with these
I
three
so do
wonderful
appreciate
gentlemen.
this.
First of all, Gord, I didn't find out, how old are you?
72.
72. And Andrew?
38.
38. And of course, we found out how old, eh? 73. So we're standing in front of a 1949, what do we got? Bickle Seagrave, which people would just die to have one of these in their personal collection. But of course, this was a running truck that ran out of the station, as we know, and certainly some of the equipment that's on it, we see some wooden ladders, some pike poles. Is this all original?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And
There was a booster reel in the back of it, and then it was relocated up above. More versatile, I guess, at the time.
yeah.
You know,
And how many gallons of water would it hold?
gosh, I think they hold like 300 gallons of water. So yeah.
Okay, so what happens after you run out of the water then?
You hook up to the tanker,
Right?
and I wish I can remember what year the tanker came along, but it was a 53 reel, and I remember it arriving in front of the library. It was a military vehicle, still painted green. And we all got together, sanded it down and painted it red, and put sirens and extra lights on it, and cut the baffles out of it, and had a big dump valve on the back end of it. Because we had portable tanks at the time.
Oh, back then they did as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we were very advanced when it came to that stuff.
Where would you get your water source from now? There's no hydrants in the village?
No, but there's
You doing?
10,000 gallons or 20,000 gallons underneath the station.
Okay.
There's multiple reservoirs, like underground tanks. One only a short distance from here. Lots of high vol hose.
Okay.
You know, the creek's certainly not what it used to be.
Now this thing's not automatic, is it?
Oh, no.
So how many gears?
4 gears.
Okay.
But the best part's on the other side.
Well, let's go to the other side.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at it.
So, and Alan will remember this.
Does this thing still pump water, Gord? Get in there, Alan. You were a big part of this truck, I'm sure. Tell us how this thing worked.
When this, so that's actually, put your clutch out of gear, and then you would reach in, anyway, put it into 4th gear, and then you'd come back over here, and you'd swing over, and that's your primer.
Just pull it down.
Just let it down, and then you get your prime.
Did you have to listen for anything?
Oh yeah, you hear it.
You'd hear it kick? Yeah.
Oh yeah, you hear it. And over here. Okay?
So when you
Quick as
flipped
you
it,
could.
and that put it into
Pump.
gear.
And then you'd use your throttle and so forth, and you had your bypass and everything else. But here's the best part. So the fire's over, you're tired, you do this, and the truck takes off.
So you got to remember not to do that.
Oh my God.
So how many lines would be fed off this thing?
You can run 2 lines too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now does it still pump today or what?
As far as I know, I don't know if, Andrew, if they've done any pumping with it or no.
No.
Because you don't have, the guys that grew up with this aren't around anymore.
Yeah.
But this was all redone. Actually, I think this thing has been overhauled twice now. And did a real nice job the last time getting it repainted and everything. And the association paid for all that, eh?
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think Nathan Staples has got quite a few hours on this.
Yeah.
Let's go check out the back of it. Or what's in that box there? I'm kind of curious. What would have been in that
That
box?
was just that. That was like for
Tools and stuff, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, so we got stuff in there. Let's head to the back here and see what we got back at the back. So the high vol, or the hard suction would be for drafting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, keep back 500 feet. Was that always on there?
Yeah.
It was, eh?
And that's the original location of the hose reel,
Booster reel, yeah.
the booster reel, yeah.
So was it an inch and a quarter?
Oh, I think it's only 1 inch.
1 inch? That's
Yeah.
all you got?
Yeah.
You might as well just water your lawn with it, eh?
Well, I mean, that's, you know, they were really promoted at one time, but really, they weren't any good for the fire. Maybe,
Small little
exposure line or something like
dumpster
that.
fire, yeah.
but there was updated.
We only had 3 inch gallon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, at one time, you never had these lights either. It was like maybe another one of those, and, yeah, probably on this side.
so in your younger days then, Alan, how tall are you, Alan? Not too tall? You'd have to jump about two,
Shorter.
you'd have to jump about 2 feet to get on the back of that, eh?
Yeah. We could do it.
So when that siren went, you'd get your volunteers, they'd come here. You might have, what, 3 or 4 people on the back of that one truck? And if you didn't get on the truck, you were left own vehicle or even walking to the call.
Kind of where it was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's amazing.
Well, there was a hose tarp on this. And I remember one night, my younger brother and I, we went to an accident right out at Brophy Road. Terrible night, rainy, sleet. Looked after that, and we looked at each other and said, "The hell with this!" And we crawled underneath the tarp to get home. It was
On top of the bed.
no underneath, yeah, on top.
On top of the bed,
hose
under the
underneath
tarp, because the weather was bad.
Oh yeah.
You'd sleep in the weirdest places when you come back from a call as a volunteer. I remember falling asleep standing up in one of the trucks. But, so does it bring back memories looking at the back of this thing?
For sure, yes.
Yeah? So, worst weather, what would you do? I mean, okay, so you're up on the back of that truck, the wind's blowing in your face, snow's blowing in your face. By the time you get here, the time you get to the call, your ears are frozen. Was it the plastic helmets back then? Or were they the metal?
Fiberglass.
Fiberglass. Nothing to keep you warm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Lots
Yeah.
of dental.
Well, that's amazing. That's quite the truck. And we're going to flip over here in a minute, and I'm going to pick Andrew's brain on this pump right here. All right, so here we are. So with Andrew again, and I've got the camera focused on this interesting crest. Can you share a little bit about that crest there, Andrew?
I believe it was made by Mark Perkins' brother. Mark Perkins is on the volunteer fire department here. I believe it was Corey Perkins that made that design. Yeah, that's how that came out.
Do you know much about the lion at all, or Wyatt?
The roar from the gore.
The roar from the gore. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. And of course, Station 83, we've got the Halligan tool and the axe. And of course, the Maltese cross with the number 83 on it. That is pretty impressive. I like the fact that a lot of the stations now here in Ottawa have the crest. And we're going to take a look at this truck here. So let's go up to the front there, Andrew. Do you know the year of this one?
It's been here as long as I have. My dad would know better.
2001, it should be.
2001. So you never experienced driving on the back of one of these old fire trucks then?
No.
And freezing your backside. So, do you drive this one, Andrew?
I'm more of a backseat kind of guy. That's where
Yeah.
I'd rather be. So.
Yeah. So tell us how this thing operates. It's all enclosed cab. Where's the pump panel?
Pump panel is behind the cab here.
Mm-hmm.
And, not enclosed yet, or not enclosed this model.
Yeah. Some of them are enclosed now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think going forward now, most of them are all enclosed.
So again, the 49, how many gallons of water was that? 300? What's this one now?
This holds 500.
Just 500.
Yeah.
So you still don't have much, there isn't much difference.
Yeah.
You know, 200 gallons, yeah, makes a difference.
1050 pump versus a 625.
Yeah, yeah. But even back then, a 625 was pretty impressive in 1949. So what kind of calls does this one go out on?
This would be our primary, so this would go to all our car accidents, fires, medical calls, burn complaints. It's pretty well, it's always going out the door first,
Yeah,
if it's an hour.
yeah.
So it's, you said it's the 2001, Gord?
These were, this was the first of the H&Es that were ordered. 14 of them.
Mm-hmm. And of course, they're all throughout the city. This is pump 83. And of course, we got different cabinets. We won't open them up, but with different equipment on them, right? Yeah. What do we got on the other side of this truck? On the other side of the pumper. Let's go take a look. Do you keep all your bunker gear here, Andrew?
Yeah. This is done by seniority too.
Okay, so where are you now with on the seniority list?
Kinda, I don't know.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have the helmets changed much over the years?
We've gotten 3 different styles since I've been on.
Yeah.
How many styles have you seen, Gord?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's quite a turnaround then when it comes to volunteers. Some of them leave, some of them get on full time. And because you're right up there with seniority.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, like I said, we lost quite a few senior members,
Yeah.
I guess, post-nomination.
So what's this truck in here? What do we got?
The tanker on the other side.
So this holds how many gallons?
25.
2,500. So a little bit more than 500, obviously.
Yeah. And
So-
this is, how old is this one? This is 3 years ago?
Yeah.
Everything's very blurry.
2017, but they only got room for really 2 people in there, right?
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is pretty common.
Yeah, because most of them, most firefighters respond in the pumper. Now this is an interesting sticker because of diversity, right? It's something new that they put on some of the trucks, which is, I think, really important. Because when you first got on, Gord, or even Alan, when you first got on, it was more of a man's job, but now we have a lot of firefighters from different diverse groups, and thank goodness, because there's so much that we can learn from the different groups.
Yeah.
Let's go around this side. This is the brush truck.
Yeah.
And of course, this must be a fun one to drive.
Yes.
Hey, you get, with wheels like that, do you get to get out in some of the fields, cornfields?
We still try to keep it on as much solid ground as possible. Yes.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of weight to it, but very nice truck.
And it holds how much when it comes to water?
I want to say that's 500 too.
Yeah. So it's got a big tank in it. Of course, do we still put brush fires out here like we used to in the olden days with the old brooms?
Yeah, we still get the brooms out.
The old pumps too, the old hand pumps that you used to pump by hand, haul that stuff in. Yeah. What's up on top there? It looks,
Behind here we have the hose drills that come off here. The hose drills, and then the actual pumps on the back here too.
These are such a huge improvement from what was put in service of nomination, which were basically the same, just a dump box, basically was what it was, and then a skid unit installed on it. But
so this is actually,
just the big single treads, you know.
Yeah.
The other ones used to just fill up with mud and.
so this is actually your pump panel back here, is it not?
Yes.
So it's interesting that they have it at the back of the vehicle. I guess it makes it easier to see both the left side and the right side.
I think also it's for storage and all the other tools.
Yeah. So that's just a skid unit that's in there.
So nozzles have changed quite a bit, eh, Alan, since you got on?
Yeah.
Used to be just, what, a straight bore nozzle most of the time? And now they've got a handle.
Now they've gone back to straight bores again.
Do have they?
Yeah, that's the...
So we're at Station 83 here in North Gower. So in the last bay, you have a trailer, but that's the original bay that you guys ran out of.
Correct.
So this was all an add-on. Well, not really an add-on. This was the township garage.
Yeah.
This was all you had for fighting fires to keep your equipment and stuff.
Yeah, and at one time, along this area here, was a hose drying rack that you would climb on top of the pumper and string the hose down and whack your head on the beams. And this door was a one-piece door that had an old broken pipe pole that you stuck through some plumbing strapping up there, shoved the door in, remember that? And then there was a hook here, that's what kept the door closed.
Oh my gosh.
But
And what did you have in here? You had the 49. What else did you have?
49, and the real pumper, a real tanker. And then the little, where was the panel, the international panel? It must have been stuffed in here or something.
And the rest of the part, was there a door there for the municipal garage? So it was all one building, but this is all you had for the fire department, and the rest was all municipal.
Yeah.
My goodness.
And this whole structure here is a cedar post in cement.
It's
And when the engineers come in here, when we wanted to do the renovations, they did an assessment report on the building, and they said, this building is probably in better shape than a lot of the other buildings that we inspect on a daily basis.
my dad built his home with cedar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it still holds up today.
Yeah.
So the building next door, though, is that the original town hall then?
That's the original township offices, yeah.
It is, okay. So they would have had snow plows or whatever running out of the other bays then?
Yeah.
Wow. So what do they keep in this trailer, other than horses?
That's where our ATV goes and all our extra equipment, like for brush fires.
Oh, so you got an ATV in here as well?
Yeah.
And any other equipment that you need?
Yeah, like our hose packs, water packs,
Yeah.
all the brooms, flares, all extra.
And what would pull this, the brush truck?
Yeah, brush truck.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's well choreographed station here. How many volunteers now in North Gower?
I believe we're sitting at 25 right now.
25. And going back again, Alan, when you got on?
17, 18, eh?
Yeah. So the numbers haven't increased that much. But again, mutual aid, when it was a township, you'd have mutual aid. I remember Rito and Osgood, I was with Osgood, there was a dividing line down Mitch Owens Road, and of course that was Gloucester on one side and Osgood on the other, and then of course Rito Road you had Manotick or Rito Township, and of course depending on where the call came into. There's none of that stuff anymore. That was very political back then. None of that stuff anymore. If there was an accident, everybody goes, and the same with here. How far west does North Gower go then? Like right to
15 minutes.
15 minutes
The other
west.
side of the Wire Hill Road.
So you're hoping that somebody else is there to back you up.
Yeah, and there's really not much there to back up. I mean, Montague and Studley. But a lot of forest between here and there.
Yeah,
And that's one of the big reasons to have this sort of resources here.
yeah.
You know.
Now the big one was the out in the west. That was the Burnt Lands.
Yeah.
Were any of you guys involved with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. You were, Alan, involved with it as well? What year was that?
Well, Bert Lyons, 98. Was it
98.
the same year as the...
Ice storm. Yeah, it was around then. And so what do you remember about that one? Were you out there, Alan?
I was out there for one night, yeah.
One night?
Yeah, one night. Yeah.
Did you get dumped on by any of the air tankers that were?
No, they weren't at night. I just remember all the bush was covered with 2 or 3 inches of really light gray ash,
Yeah.
and they were walking through that and putting out little spot fires.
You remember that, Gord?
Yeah, I arranged to send, must have been 30 pails of foam there. And then I went up and checked on my guys, and they said they hadn't been relieved. The record said they had. It was a challenging time for some people that were trying, stuck in those record keeping or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
The whole road was lined with foam bills.
I bet. How many nights did you spend up there, Gord, or were you back
I
and
didn't.
forth?
I
You were back and
I
forth?
said, you know what, there's enough chiefs here. I'll go back and look after the east end of Ottawa. So,
Smart idea. And then, of course, the ice storm.
yeah,
Were you around for that?
well, big time.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we had, I thought we ran a very, very good show out there. I actually have a picture of all the hydro guys and everything else, and we had military in the station, we had hydro guys in the station. I tried to stay one night, and there was no place to sleep. So I think I got stuck in some office someplace. And I always remember the next morning, first time I was ever paid to sleep in a fire station. Get up the next morning, decided to have a shower. I was getting out of the shower, I didn't realize there was this bar across the top, and I peeled the top of my head off. And then every time that someone came into the command center, they'd go, what happened to your head? What happened to your head? Oh, Jesus. But yeah, that was, the Cumberland area was hit hard.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to go up in one of the military helicopters. An unbelievable sight of miles and miles of hydro, the old wooden ones, laying flat, and then the damage to some of the towers were just. Those guys have got to be commended for what they did, I'll tell you. Getting that up and everything.
Yeah.
And then here, they had center set up here. And had brought in, had power here or not?
Yeah, the generator, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the big generator.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How has, of course, this one that we just finished commemorating as well, September the 11th, or September, the 11th, 2001. How has that changed firefighting? Has it changed it a lot? I mean, obviously, the firefighting techniques and everything are similar, but has it really made a big difference on the firefighter nowadays? Or
I think it's probably enhanced the firefighting community, like, young and old, like, I mean, you can relate to it, or it's one of those occasions where you knew where you were when it happened, eh?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, where were you when Elvis died, type thing,
Mm-hmm.
but a much greater degree. I don't know what the younger guys think, but I think there was a lot of sympathy for the department. A lot of people from not a lot of people from this area went down, but people from all over Canada went to help, and
Mm-hmm.
no. I think so many of them came away so disillusioned. They thought they were going to actually find, save,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a huge, huge disappointment from that perspective. So.
Yeah. Well, again, gentlemen, thank you for your time today. I so do appreciate it. Invite me back. If there's anything else you want to share, I'd love to be able to come in and redo this, or not redo it, but add to it, I should say. So again, thank you, gentlemen.
and it's been great.
Thank you.
You're holding up another picture there, Gord. Who do we got in the picture here?
So this is from 1948, when they established the village fire department, North Gower Fire Department. And this is Howard Perkins here, H.L. Perkins, founder of Perkins Lumber. And at the time, he was appointed chief. And my father, Eldon Mills, appointed deputy chief. And of this whole group, the only surviving member is Fred Alport, who lives in the Maitland area now. So,
Wow.
Ferd Pratt, former Reeve, and was it Merritt? What do they have?
So
Just Reeve.
these were all volunteer firefighters
All
of North Gower.
Yeah,
Original.
original.
My goodness.
Yeah. Okay, well, this is Joe Beckett, who went on to be chief in Goulburn. Eldon Mills. Reverend Gooch, who was the Anglican minister here for years. Colin Wright, who did a lot of work on the 911 system before he had to retire due to health issues. And there's Allen Sadler there. Norman Vine was from the Fire Marshal's office, did a lot with the training programs with us. And Brian Mills, who passed away in '96, line of duty. It's a little hard to see. This is myself here. Brian Harrison, whose son Scott just got on with Hamilton. And I think this was taken after attending the Eastern Ontario Firefighters Games. And we were quite successful. The first year we went there, won a number of the races. So.
What year would it have been, roughly?
I think that's got to be 1970.
Who's the gentleman on the top right with the uniform on?
Top right here? That's Norman Vine. He was from the Fire Marshal's office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was a good friend of the department and remained friends with my dad for
Gord,
years.
we got another picture here. Who do we got in the picture?
All right, Colin Wright, Clarence Seabrook, Howard Greer, who's the flagpoles out front for him, Eldon Mills, Clifton Pratt, Joe Beckett, Bruce Gray, John Bernhardt, Brian Wright, Ken Janak, Bob Cummings, Lyle Perkins, current owner of Perkins Lumber, Peter Wright, Lloyd Highland, Peter Dunlop, Glenn Wallace, Brian Mills, Robert Craig, Gord Mills, Alan Sadler, Fred Hodges, Colin Thompson, and Brian Wright.
So you're-
Brian Harrison, sorry.
You're the third from the top right there?
That's right.
With the mustache.
With the mustache.
And just beside the guy with the beard is Alan. And your dad is down here somewhere, he said, eh?
Frank Dupuis, who was Cumberland, passed away about 5 years ago now. Captain Brian Mills.
and Dan Francoeur, who's on full-time.